As we all know, many boys have been killed in war. If we were able to count, it would come to millions. And this includes every country all throughout the world, throughout all time. The question I'd like to ask then is, why did God create these boys? If this is the creation of God, why were millions killed? And as every boy who dies has to have a killer, did God create the boys who were killed? And did God create the killers? You might say that's a rather vicious question, but an important one. The answer to that question is imperative. And we may look at the answers that we are given, and you will find that religion has no answer. Absolutely none. The best it can do is to smile and say very piously, who are we to question the wisdom of God? And that's a perfect way to straddle the fence. Science has another answer. Science says God is dead. Even those scientists who believe in God will join the statement that who are we to question the wisdom of God? And so the world goes on, watching its boys killed and presuming that God has even created those boys, and possibly that God has even created the boys who killed those boys. This has been going on for centuries. The Sermon on the Mount answers the question, but it does not answer the question as religion answers it, and it does not answer the question as science answers it. It does answer it in a way that can eliminate that killing. And there has never been an answer on this earth to eliminate that killing except in the voice of the Spirit. Now we know that Jesus went up to a mountaintop. But we must see that he did not climb a mountain. We must see that his mountaintop was high consciousness. He certainly didn't stand on the top of a mountain and shout down to the people below. He entered the high consciousness, and when he was set, they came unto him. And he gave them the Beatitudes. And we have learned from the Beatitudes that they were a summary of his way of rebirth. But rebirth from what? Rebirth from the human being who goes out to get killed in war. Rebirth from the human being who gets hit on the freeway. Rebirth from the human being who thinks I have cancer today or tuberculosis tomorrow. Rebirth. And so he said, I have come to give you a new way of life. Not the old that you're accustomed to, not the human self that is born and dies, but a new self. Not a self that you will patch up and then pour new wine into an old bottle. Not a garment that has been used and then you put a new patch in it from a new garment, but rather a totally new self, a reborn self, a self that bears absolutely no similarity to the self that you never were. You see, he was ready not to pull punches, not to compromise, not to be expedient, not to live in a divided consciousness, not to remain separated from the Spirit. The church has been perfectly willing to do that. Science has been perfectly willing to do that. Education has been perfectly willing to do that. Every phase of human life has been perfectly willing to compromise, but not the Spirit that walked the earth named Jesus. And so he said, this is not a message for the timid. This is a message for those who wish to walk the earth in Christ, living in truth, not living in a human sense of righteousness, not living even in human goodness, but living in spiritual identity. And to emphasize that unless we live in spiritual identity, we will not experience the fruits of the Spirit. He clearly said that the salt which has lost its savour will be trodden under the feet of men. And he was referring to the human race. The human race which has lost its identity, its sense of self, having been dwarfed by its separation from the very power of being itself. He believed, and he taught, and he tested, and he proved, and he demonstrated that there is no fallen man. He was bringing back the realization of the great revelation in the first chapter of Genesis, that man is the divine image and likeness of God. And then he said, look out at these who have been killed in war. How do you kill the divine image and likeness of God? Look out at these murderers, these adulterers. Look out at those who have been hurt and are suffering. How do you do that to the divine image and likeness of God? He was showing us that those who have been killed, those who have died, those who have robbed, those who have been in pain, those who have shed tears, are not the divine image and likeness of God. Then who are they? If God created man in his image and likeness, endowing them with every divine quality, who are those who suffer? Who are those who kill? And that is why the church smiles and says we cannot question the wisdom of God, and that is why science says God is dead. Because the issue can never be answered by the counterfeit human mind. The counterfeit human mind will always see boys being killed. It will always see cripples. It will always see cancer. It will always see flood and fire and hurricane. And none of these were created by God. And so the Sermon on the Mount contrasts the way of the counterfeit mind the way of the counterfeit consciousness, ye have heard it said of old. That's what we always know and think and hear from the world around us, from our teachers, from religion, from science, from education, from history, from psychology, from psychiatry, from medicine. Ye have heard it said of old. But I say unto you, and I am not medicine. I am not science. I am not religion. I am none of these things. I must be identified, for I is not even Jesus. This was not Jesus saying, I say unto you. This was I saying, I say unto you. And I is your self. Your high self says unto you every moment of the day, every word that is in the Sermon on the Mount. I, in the midst of you, say unto you. I, the Father within you, say unto you. And then you must say to yourself, shall I follow I, the Father within me, or shall I follow what I have heard of old? And there you have the strife between your true consciousness and your old false consciousness. The warfare between the spirit and the flesh. I is the spirit, and the old way is the flesh. Spirit says to the flesh, I have a better way for you. And the flesh says, I'm too conditioned, too used to the ways of yesterday, too used to the ways where the world sheds tears, too used to pain, too used to suffering, too used to war. I cannot listen to this new I. And so the false human consciousness pierces the Christ every day. It refuses to wear the seamless garment. And both the church and science have lost the way. We will not find our reality with the cosmic toys of science, and we will not find our reality with religion until it accepts, I say unto you. And when this word comes in the midst of you, revealing itself, then you know you have been touched by the Christ. Now, every day seems to bring new experiences from people, beautiful ones, liberation from fear, from want, from doubt, liberation from all of the things that we have when we are imprisoned only in the consciousness of the flesh, only in the material consciousness. And so the old way again is that material consciousness, and here comes I, the light, seeping through the senses to bring a new message, a new horizon, a new self, a new way. And we find suddenly that I refuses to countenance good and evil. I refuses to countenance a fallen self. No, I says unto you, there is no fallen self. You have been living in a false sense of self. I am self. I am not fallen. I am the divine image and likeness, and I am the only being. And so we hearken now to the highest self. And it says to us something very strange. Human righteousness is not enough. Human righteousness will not take you into the kingdom of heaven on earth. Your righteousness must exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees. Or else you will not enter the kingdom of heaven on earth. That is what I in the midst of us says. Who are these scribes? These Pharisees? Are these men of 2,000 years ago? Or do you think we have them with us now? The scribes were the doctors of the law. They were the men who sat in the back chambers, and like our men in the House of Representatives or the Senate, they made the laws. Only these were religious laws. And then they interpreted the laws. They said, this is the law, and you obey it. And the Pharisees said, fine, we do obey it. Rigidly, narrowly, completely. Our way. And so the Pharisees said, the way to obey the law is to fast, to sacrifice, to tithe. And if somebody hurts you, hit him back. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Sue him if he doesn't pay up. They had their sense of righteousness. It was all based on the false human identity. It wasn't righteousness at all. It was self-righteousness. It was human goodness pursued to its highest form, perhaps. And yet, it was ready to stone an adulteress. So the consciousness of that day and the consciousness of this day are both revealed as the one Pharisaical consciousness, the one consciousness of the scribes. Who are the Pharisees today? Do you not see that every branch of humanhood is a Pharisee? This was the highest and most powerful sect in Judaism. Today there are Pharisees in every church. There are Pharisees in every branch of science. Do it my way. We know. But I say unto you, your righteousness must exceed the righteousness even of the church, even of science, even of medicine, even of psychiatry, even of positive thinking. Your righteousness must exceed all human righteousness. Why? Because until it does, you will be a divided consciousness. You will not be who you are. You will be hiding from yourself. You will be walking in the ways of this world, which is not my Father's kingdom. Now he tells us all about what righteousness is. In our human righteousness, we think it's perfectly proper to retaliate, to give that which we have received in return. In our human righteousness, we like people to know how holy we are, how philanthropic, how good. That seems normal to us and seems justified. In our human righteousness, we like people to know that we are thoughtful and considerate. In our human righteousness, we know we have to acquire things. We have the right to compete. We've been taught to be do-gooders, go-getters, busy people doing things, acquiring things. But a new way dawns when we learn that I, the Spirit within, am going to teach you the way to live without labor, without fear, without killing, without being killed, without robbery, without all of the human degrees of pain and suffering. I, the spirit within, I do not look out at the world from one point called human vision. I do not see the world from the point of a human consciousness. And we find there is a great revelation coming, that I am going to change your way of looking at the world. Instead of looking from within, your human sense of vision, your human sense of hearing, your human sense of knowing, looking out, I will show you how to look from infinity and to look within. A complete turnabout, a complete reversal in which, looking from the infinite self, we look at the world within it and see only that which is within the infinite. There is no killing in the infinite. There is no war. There is no pain. There are no tears. There is no death. There is no limitation. There is no lack. And if you would be righteous, because your righteousness must exceed all human righteousness, there is only one kind of righteousness that can be righteous. It is the righteousness of spirit. Only in spiritual righteousness do we fulfill this request of I, that our righteousness exceed the scribes and the Pharisees. There is no human righteousness in spirit. There is no me who can be righteous. You cannot, as a human being, be righteous and fulfill this requirement of the Spirit. And so, quite clearly, I is saying, you must change from that human sense of self to your spiritual identity. For only in your spiritual identity can you be righteous beyond the scribes and the Pharisees. That is how I in the midst of you is lifting you into spiritual identity, pushing you beyond the extremes of humanhood into Christhood. And unless our spiritual righteousness is established, we cannot experience the fruits of the Spirit. And now we have the old way, an eye for an eye. But I say unto you, resist not evil. And if someone sues you at the law and wins your coat, give him your cloak as well. How strange. But we're being shown again that in our human consciousness, it is inconceivable that we would say to the person who has won our coat, here, now take our cloak. It is forcing you to the next level of consciousness, a consciousness which says, I recognize no material universe. I recognize spiritual universe as the only universe. And I can do it only because I am spirit. Mortality is the belief under which man labors today. And because he believes in mortality, he sees mortality, he sees death. I say unto you, you must come into the realization of immortality now. In the realization of immortality, we reject every belief, idea, concept, every temptation which even suggests the possibility of a mortal self. You cannot age in the acceptance of immortality. You cannot be sick in the acceptance of immortality. You cannot be a changing creature in the acceptance of immortality. But is there a mortal being on this earth? I know not any. I, spirit, say put on the garment of immortality in the recognition that the divine image and likeness of God is your only name, and the divine image and likeness of God can never be a mortal being. I, if I be lifted up, will lift all men unto immortality realized now. There is nothing but the divine image and likeness of God. And so we are told various ways in which we fall into the trap. That is why you are told to give your cloak if someone wins your coat, so that you will not fall into the trap of thinking of yourself as a mortal being with mortal needs. And let us not think for a moment that the Spirit is unaware of our needs. If it tells us to give our cloak, it has a plan. If it says, if someone says to you, walk a mile, walk two, it has a plan. Always, it is revealing to us that we are not limited to the margins of our own consciousness. We are to learn to walk upon the waters of spirit. We are to learn to live in complete, absolute confidence that spirit knoweth its needs and fulfills its needs where we stand. All of this is part of the new righteousness, which is really the new self, the new identity, the reunion with that which we have ever been, the divine image and likeness of God. In that reunion, we are resurrected. And that resurrection is the resurrection from that which we have believed ourselves to be, a mortal individual made of flesh and blood, to the realization that the form which I bear is not the beginning of my life. My life did not begin when this form appeared. My life is the divine image and likeness of God, pre-existent to this form, and existent now, and ever existent as that life. All that the Father hath has been embodied in the divine image and likeness of my being. This is called the infinite way because the divine image and likeness of God is an infinite being. And when you have accepted yourself as spirit, immortal, divine, you are automatically accepting infinite reality as your being. And you see, in that acceptance of infinity as your being, you step out of the old consciousness, the old beliefs in righteousness, which said I had to retaliate. I had to be angry when someone did something wrong to me. I had to worry when I lacked or when I was limited. I had to fear what people could do to this body. I had to worry about the calendar. I had to be concerned about germs or nuclear warfare. Why? Because I believed myself to be a mortal being. But I say unto you, your righteousness must end in spiritual righteousness. And then you will know that none of the weapons of this world have power. There is no good and evil. That's the way of the old consciousness. In the new consciousness, the tree of knowledge of good and evil is crucified. We are resurrected into the tree of life. Now, this is just the beginning of the sermon. We are to come out of it with the realization that I am I. That I am self-sufficient in Christ. And that self-sufficiency includes a permanent eternal life fed from within by the infinite Spirit continuously, without interruption, in the perfect rhythm of the Father. There is that consciousness which knows, I am that I am. I am that infinite Spirit. I am that divine image and likeness. I am the Son. I am the offspring of God. And that consciousness is the consciousness that walked on the earth in the appearance of Jesus, in the appearance of Moses, in the appearance of Buddha, in the appearance of Krishna, in the appearance of Lao Tzu, Shankara, Nanak, many, many others. All were this I, appearing as these enlightened leaders, none of whom said that there is such a thing as death, and all of whom took their bodies with them to prove it. They have been so far ahead of the human consciousness that we have thought of them as specially endowed people, even given some of them the idea of deity, specially chosen. But they were not. They are all the same outer expression of the I that we are. The salt may have lost its savor, but I, the Spirit, am leading the salt back to the realization that it is the light of the Father. This is the message contained in the 5th chapter of Matthew. Now you have noticed, no doubt, that there is a tendency in all of us to downgrade our fellow citizens. It's such an easy thing to do, especially those whom we do not know personally or intimately. We can downgrade the ex-president's wife, the late president's wife, the present president's wife. We may not like things they do. We can downgrade the president. We can downgrade this religion or that religion, or this college or that college. We can downgrade just about everybody we know who doesn't agree with us. And that's all out of the human consciousness. If it were possible to invent some kind of a device that you could attach to your hand, and every time you downgraded somebody, this thing would come up and slap you, that would be a marvelous thing. Eventually, we'd stop downgrading people. And the moment we stopped downgrading people, we would do precisely what I, in the midst of us, has been telling us to do for some 10,000 years. It is telling us the most extraordinary and astonishing thing, to love our neighbors, to love even our enemies, to do good to them who despitefully use us. You will search everywhere to find someone who obeys that. To do good to them who despitefully use you. But why does it tell us that if nobody does it? Again, it is telling us that you will never do it as a human being. No human being is capable. The only way you will do it is to lift yourself beyond that human consciousness. And then, lo and behold, you'll discover the secret. When you're out of the human consciousness, no one will despitefully use you. They can only do it to a human being. When you are in spiritual consciousness, lo, everywhere is the Christ. Again, the wisdom contained in these words is to lift us beyond the human consciousness. Now we can say, in my new spiritual consciousness, I see no enemy. I see no fool. I see no worthless, contemptible fellow. I see no raka. We are told in one of the messages here in the sermon, not only shall we not kill, but we may not even be angry. We may not even call another individual a worthless, contemptible fool or raka. Because if we do, we will be judged. And what is the meaning of that? Do you see what happens when you call another individual a fool? Or the many other adjectives we know so well? You are saying, there goes one who is not the divine image and likeness of God. You have been trapped. There is no such being on this earth. There is no one who is not the divine image and likeness of God. And the moment you have fallen into the trap and declared this one to be a fool, and this one to be a swine, and that one to be an ignoramus, and this one to be contemptible, you have put yourself on a pedestal above God. You have said, God may have said that He created man in His image and likeness. But look at all these exceptions. There are no exceptions. And that's why it was necessary to ask the question, if millions have been killed in war, did God create them? And did God create the killers who killed them? And you must see the human form then as an imagined form. You could not kill that which God had created. You must look beneath the mask of form to see the life that is there. When you look beneath the mask of form to see the life that is there, you will not say contemptible. You will not say scoundrel. You will not say reprobate. You will not say thief. You will not say murderer. You will unmask the form and see the life. And you will not do it in a human consciousness. You will only do it in your true consciousness, I, Spirit, hid in Christ, one with the Father. Yes, it seems impossible. Be ye perfect, says the Father, the moment you say it seems impossible. Be ye perfect as your Father. It is impossible for the human, but I have already crucified the false sense of self. I have already prepared the way. I already have sent out the light that will lead you. I already welcome you into the kingdom of heaven on earth. All you need to do is follow I in the midst of you, for I will show you the way to that kingdom. In your own human sense of righteousness, you will fail. And so you must lay aside all that is part of your human sense of righteousness. And once more we feel the subtle way in which Spirit prevents us from committing suicide. Spirit says, now, drop your false sense of self. Drop the sense mind which knows only the mortal you. Drop the sense mind which knows only the form that someday will be buried. And to make sure we drop the sense mind, Spirit catches us at every turn and says, you call him a scoundrel. Why did you think he was a scoundrel? Because your sense mind thought so. He isn't a scoundrel. He's the divine image and likeness. You have a false concept of what he is. Why have you a false concept? Because you are living in your sense mind. Be renewed. Be transformed by the renewing of that mind. The Christ mind will show you that you are surrounded by spiritual being. The Christ mind will show you that where you have seen injustice, justice is. Where you have seen bad health, perfect health is. Where you have seen an aging face, only the Spirit stands before you. Our consciousness is being lifted out of the rut of the civilization of the scribes and the Pharisees, out of the compromising human mind, out of the adulterating human sense of things. We are learning to bear witness to truth, to spirit, to identity, to reality, to the immortal universe around us. We are learning to walk with God. All these years that the Bible has been leading us above the righteousness of the human mind has been rebelling like a dog on a leash that refuses to go in the direction you want to go. And so we become very vigilant to that human mind. Every time it opens its mind to think, we learn to say, shh, God is speaking. Listen. Don't talk. Take no thought, little human mind. Take neither an anxious thought or a human thought or any kind of thought. Let God do your thinking for you. Take no thought for your life. And there we have the great passage. The old way was for human minds to decide what was right and what was wrong. The new way says, let God decide. Let the mind of the Father in you decide. Let the shepherd within do all your thinking. In other words, live in the mind of Christ. Now that mind will never look out and judge this world. That mind will never look out and be in need of anything. That mind will never say, today I lack. Today I have not. Today there is something that I must have that I don't have. The Christ mind will never say these things because the Christ mind is self-sufficient. And as long as you find yourself needing, lacking, wanting, desiring, you are still in the limited human mind, and you need not be. You need only remember that the limited human mind is not my mind. I am not that mortal self with a limited human mortal mind. The Christ mind is now my mind. I'm not falling into the trap. I haven't banished God from earth. I'm not selling the idea that man has to wait until he dies to go to heaven. We haven't banished God from this earth by such a declaration. God is this earth. And we are seeing our false concept of it. God is the one mind. And that mind has individualized itself as the Christ mind of every individual on this earth. Already finished now. That's our spiritual bank, but we haven't drawn upon it. We have accepted the limited human mind, the mind that is separate from the divine mind, and we have labored, we have struggled, we have sought survival, all because of this false mind and its false thought and its false sense of righteousness. Where is the Christ mind? Is there a place where it is not? If God is all, and God is the Father, and God is the Son, where is the Christ mind? Omnipresent. Draw upon it. Like Niagara Falls, you're standing right in front of Lake Erie. The falls will continue to flow as long as Lake Erie is there. You have no lack or limitation as long as divine mind stands where you stand. But if we are not aware that the divine Christ mind stands where we stand, that divine Christ power stands where we stand, that divine Christ all-knowing stands where we stand, we limit ourselves to our own human resources, our own human sense of things. And the Pharisee in the midst of us dwarfs us down to a dying individual. I have. I am. There's no future tense. I accept. And so we look at every claim now as the tempter. The human mind tempting us to make us believe there is no I. There is no Christ. There is no God. There is no infinite self functioning here. There's just a limited mortal being. That's what the human mind keeps telling us. But I say unto you, ye are the light. And don't hide your light. You must put it on a candlestick and hold it up. You must have a spiritual consciousness in spite of all claims to the contrary. I met a young lady the other day who said she was studying positive thinking. I asked her if it worked. Well, that was a strange question because she didn't expect that question. She thought about it, and while she was thinking, I said, well, have you ever been sick? Oh, yes, I've been sick. Well, have you ever heard that in the Bible it says, take no thought for your life? I don't believe it, she said. I don't believe it. Oh, it really does, I told her. There's a place in the Bible where it says that. Take no thought for my life? Yes. I've got to see it to believe it. So I showed it to her. Next question was, you mean I can't even think about what meals I'm going to serve? No, it doesn't mean that. It means you don't have to take thought for your real life. And of course, I knew before I had started that I wasn't going to get anywhere, nor was I trying, but some circumstance had placed us two together in a certain place, and this seemed to be necessary. The human mind cannot accept that there is another mind which is already preserving life unto eternity. And every thought we have about preserving our life is a denial of the Christ mind. There is a consciousness which knows that God, being all, God must be my life. I am the divine life. And the moment I take thought about protecting the divine life, I am denying myself to be the divine life, because divine life needs no protection. As I resist evil, I am saying I am not the divine life. And that's very fine for a reasoning, logical mind. But when I can face the evil with no need for protection, no need to defend myself, it will be because I have accepted that I am the divine life. And I will have accepted something else. Not only am I the divine life, but that which faces me in the role of evil is not. There is no evil on the earth in the realization that God is all. And so I face the evil, knowing there, behind the mask of evil, behind the distortion of the cosmic mind, is divine life. Here is divine life. And they are not separated. It only appears that way. Neither am I separated from God, nor that which seems to be evil. It may think it is separated from God, but it cannot be. No one and no thing is separated from God, because God is all. I, Spirit, am all. And whoever knows that his and her name is I, is asking in my name, and will receive. And this is the only protection you need against the so-called evils of this world. I, Spirit, am unseparated from God, and God is everywhere. There is no place in this universe where I am separated from God. Whoever would strike me must strike God. But, of course, if there's God and me, then I and the Father are no longer one in my consciousness, and I'm back into the Pharisee, the scribe, the human, the mortal who must die. Wherever you find yourself denying that God is all, by calling someone else a scoundrel, you are losing your identity. That should be your signal. Before the word comes out of the tip of your tongue, and even before the thought comes into a word, pluck out the image in your mind. When you see the scoundrel, pluck out that eye. Pluck out that image in your eye. Don't let it get so far that you become trapped into the belief that there is an evil person on the face of the earth, or a sick one, or a dying one. This is Christ consciousness when you can look forth and say to the world, take up your bed and walk. There's no sickness there. There is only I, infinite I, invisible, functioning perfectly. And this is the only way we can learn to be perfect as our Father, in a righteousness that is not limited to the human sense of righteousness, but knows that I, Spirit, am unseparated from any individual on the face of the earth as well as God, because God and that individual are one and the same in the invisible self. There is no space or time to separate the identity of you from the identity of any individual who has ever lived or ever will. In reality, we are unseparated. And as long as we are unaware of that, we are in a divided consciousness which will know the things of this world and will not accept, receive, experience the fruits of oneness. And so we're looking now from the uplifted consciousness which sees that no war has ever killed the divine image and likeness of God. No hospital contains the divine image and likeness of God. No stillborn child, no blue baby, no mongoloid baby is the divine image and likeness of God. What about the good babies? Only in their invisible life is their reality. We are looking past the form. We are not sowing to the form. We are sowing to the spiritual reality which we have mentally interpreted into the appearance called form. We are following the Master. There's a great way, a great technique that you can develop to see past the images of this world. It may begin this way. Take a tree. You have the image of a tree. And here comes the woodman, and he cuts it down. Did he cut down God's image or your mental image? Or here comes a fire, and it burns it down. Did it burn down God's image or your mental image? So we see that the fire has burned our mental image. There is still an invisible tree right there. Now, how did the mental image of a tree come there? It came there because it had a witness who was in a false consciousness. It had a witness who was looking out through material eyes. God did not create matter. Material eyes cannot see the creation of God. And so how did this image get there? And this is a secret I'd like you to know. It is not one image. It is billions of images appearing as one. And when you can catch this, it will help you to stop those images. Let's look at it this way. Light is going through your eye, appearing to you as a tree. That light is moving so swiftly that you wonder how the brain can ever record what's happening. That isn't one image of a tree. That is billions and billions and billions and billions of images per second, one after the other, accumulating crushing one upon the other as they come through the eye with such infinite speed and such intensity that all of these individual images are compacted into one, which you call a tree. And the way you might understand it even better would be to look at your TV set. And there's an image on the TV set, a 21-inch image. Now, the way that got there is pretty much the same way you saw a tree. How did the image get on your TV set? If the program is in New York, or Hollywood, or Chicago, how could they ship a picture to your set? They didn't. They took a picture in the studio, and in order to ship it to your set, it had to be reconverted into electrical impulses. And those electrical impulses come through the air, one by one, but in great speed. And they hit your picture tube. And as they hit your picture tube, the electrical impulses are reassembled into a picture. The same way you talk on the phone. You can't send your voice to Chicago. As a matter of fact, if they were sending sound to Chicago, it would take quite a while before somebody there would hear you. They can't send the sound of your voice. They have to change that sound. It must go with the speed of light for it to be instantaneous. So they convert sound into electricity. And they ship the electricity over the wire. But they don't ship your voice. They ship electrical impulses which are imitating your voice. And they go with the speed of light instead of the speed of sound, so that your hello here is hello there instantaneously. Electrical impulses at the other end are reconverted to sound. But in between the sound here and the sound there are electrical impulses. Billions of them to make the sound of your voice. Billions of them to ship a picture through the air as electrical impulses reassembled by your TV set into picture form. And so it is with the image of a tree. Out of the cosmic mind, billions and billions and billions and billions of electrical impulses, which we receive and reassemble into the picture called tree. That's what our brain is doing every minute. When you know this, you can be still and slow those images down. You can consciously say that I know that everything in this material world is not one image, but is composed of billions of images moving through my brain. And the reaction of my brain to atoms that I cannot see becomes the visible forms of this world. That is how I am trapped into seeing people die. That is how I am trapped into seeing people suffer. God made none of it. Neither did God make the fire or flood or the hurricane. But that is how I am trapped into experiencing these things. The images of the cosmos flow through and into my consciousness, and I accept them. There's a good way to remember how we may attain that level of consciousness which can look out at our fellow man without judgment, in spite of what appears to us. We see it enacted in the sky every day. Slowly, out of nowhere, that orange rim appears on the horizon. And then it rises to its zenith, overlooking its universe, smiling at everyone, smiling at red China, red Russia, smiling everywhere in spite of who is there or what the eye may see. It comes down south of Market Street and north of Market Street. It comes down on the slums as well as Nob Hill. The sun plays no favorites. It looks out benignly at all. And as Christ rises in us like the sun, it finds in us the capacity to do the same. You will recognize the rising Christ within as you are able to look out and withdraw judgment, not falling into the trap of a human consciousness which says the sun cannot go to your garden, only to his. And when you avoid that trap, you will discover the rising Christ will appear in and as your living consciousness. It cannot make its home in a human consciousness. And we are barricading ourselves from the very things we seek. We are holding off the Christ of our own being as we pass out our foolish judgments, which gain us nothing but a moment of self-superiority over that which has no reality whatsoever. We can even judge ourselves wrongly, let alone our neighbor. The moment you're capable of the various emotional jags that we all seem to go through about our anger for this one, our contempt for that one, our recriminations, our animosities, these too prevent the rising Christ. And all we gain is a momentary satisfaction of a personal nature, and we lose the reality of spirit, the single eye, truth in consciousness. And so we remember that rising sun, which is completely impersonal. And we learn to look out as the rising sun, as the risen Christ. And we do not personalize this world by making one bad and one good. We do not fall into that temptation. As you resolutely permit yourself no deviation into the false judgment of this world, you are walking the line of righteousness beyond the human. Beyond, ye have heard it said of old. Now we're told that just as we have learned for a moment to stop the false images that flutter through our brain, that force us to accept the false appearances, we are told to multiply those instances. And the way we are told that is to lay not up treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust corrupt, but rather lay up your treasures in heaven. And you see, every time you break the circuit of cosmic thought and attain that split second of silence, that which comes through is your daily bread. That which comes through is the invisible, infinite, the voice, the one, the self, the power, the divine mind. And it teaches you how to forgive. It teaches you how to love. It multiplies your lack into abundance. It removes the lump. It shows you itself. And so our laying up treasures in heaven is the constant awareness that there is no place where God is not. And every moment that I deny this, by seeing one who is not the divine image, I am laying up my treasures on the earth where moth and rust corrupt. And all I can receive for it is corruption. Corruption of the form, corruption of the life, corruption of the experience. Now let's do that again, because the way you break these images up and attain your silence may be the very need that you have sought in vain for attaining the real deep silence of my peace. Even in our desire to serve the Spirit, we have served Mammon because we have not been able to attain this silence. And so look again and realize the speed of light traveling at 186,000 miles in 1 single second brings into you 186,000 miles of light in that second. And that isn't one image. That's more images than all of the computers in this world can ever calculate. And they are separated images. There is space between every image coming into you. And in that 1 second, you are inundated by individual interrupted images, spaced with intervals between them, but to you they are one image because of their tremendous speed. That's why you see things as a continuum, although they are separated. Consciously know that and be still, and you will find the images of this world will respond to your knowledge. You can look at an apple or a drinking cup and do the same. You can look at a criminal. You can look at anything in this world and realize it is composed of multiple images, not one. And the great speed of those images gives you the impression of one image called a duck or a goose or a chicken or a fowl or a bird. But all that is there is multiple images. And these things die because they are images. And this world is made of those images. He hangeth the world on nothing but images. And that is why we are here, to overcome the images. As you overcome them, you overcome this world of images. And only then, as you overcome the world of images through the repeated silence, the repeated laying up treasures in heaven, in spiritual consciousness, are you invited into the reality of being, to see him as he is, to inherit the earth. And then your spiritual fruitage falls in abundance, because in the absence of your subservience to the visual images of this world and to the images created by the other four senses, for sound is an image in the brain just as sight is. The sensations of touch are images in the brain just as sight is. Taste, smell, all these are images in the brain. And as we are taken out of the images, as we slow them down consciously, you find they lose their power to fool you into the belief that evil exists on this earth. They actually lose their power to convince you that you lack or are limited. They lose their power to convince you that you can suffer as the world has suffered. You learn that these were images of touch, of smell, of taste, of hearing, of sight. Sensations. Multiple sensations at alarming speed, ticking away at the brain until it is completely brainwashed, hypnotized by this world. To overcome those sensations, slowing them down, and then stepping out of them, takes you out of that human mind which is a slave to the world of sensation, out of the cosmic mind which is shooting its false recreated universe through the air as invisible atoms, and breaks the whole circuit of the cosmic and human mind which is the great deceiver about the reality of your being. That's why we're told to lay up treasures in heaven. The repeated silence keeps breaking the continuity of the lie. And as less human thought enters your consciousness, more divine thought takes its place. As a man thinketh, so is he. As more divine thought takes its place, more divine thought appears externally to your being. More divine thought appears out there as matter. More divine thought becomes manifest. You are converting the world of human thought into the world of divine thought. You're changing life streams. You are letting divine thought express where previously, through your ignorance of its presence, you barricaded yourself from it. And you're doing it with the silence which lays up treasures in heaven, which brings forth more divine thought and less human thought. You're actually changing your universe. This is the rising Christ. Now, ascension has been made to be a word of the future. It isn't. The rising Christ is ascending. And every meditation is part of your ascension. Every moment of truth from within is part of your ascension. The I that says unto you, lay up treasures in heaven, in spiritual consciousness. The I that wrote this Bible, the I that spoke these words where Jesus appeared, is always speaking them at the door of your human consciousness, waiting for it to be still, that it may lay up spiritual treasures within you. There is no place to go. What the church has not realized is that I say unto you is telling the world that only I in the midst of you is the voice of God. Only I that comes to you in the silence of your mind is the living Spirit of God. And it makes no difference what church it is, or what branch of science, or what branch of metaphysics. Only I in the midst of you is God. And that I has no name. It is not Protestant, it is not Jew, it is not Catholic, it is not Hindu, it is not Buddhist, it is I. It is not white nor is it black. It is I. And as long as we make these human distinctions, We are saying Raka to our fellow man. And we are under the judgment of our own judgment. We are separating ourselves from the life stream of the very spirit that we are seeking. That sun is shining on all religion, all colors, and our consciousness must do the same. We cannot continue then to serve two consciousnesses. You cannot live in a human consciousness and serve the spirit at the same time. You cannot serve God and mammon. You cannot serve two masters. In this divided mind, we divide ourselves. We split ourselves up into a separation. Now you must have the feel of the Sermon on the Mount by now. It is the revelation that there is no power except the power of God. The old consciousness, the old way, the way of old said there were two powers. There was God up there and the devil down here. And the new consciousness says, no, not true. There is not God up there and the devil down here. The only devil there is the human consciousness which does not know God aright. Because God isn't up there and not down here. God hasn't ceded earth to the devil. God is up there and God is down here and God is everywhere there is. And so it tells you, swear not at all. Swear not by heaven. Swear not by earth, nor swear by Jerusalem. Because God is omnipresent. Everywhere God is. There is no place where God is not. And that leaves no room for Mr. Devil. It doesn't even leave room for a human consciousness. And as long as you live in one, you're not living in God. We are being told that when we're not living in God, because we're living in a human consciousness, what we are calling life is nothing but the living death that masquerades as life. Mortality is its name, and it is a pure and total myth. You do not go to heaven when you die. You are in heaven when you know that I am the Spirit of God. And that knowing is not a yea or a nay, not a Lord, Lord. That knowing is the rejection of all that is unlike your spiritual self. Now, meditation should be easier as you consciously stop the multitudinous images that make up each individual form. You may even find that you're locked in, and that locking in is a great peace. And then the Father within, He doeth the works. I would have liked to discuss divine love today, and maybe there's a moment to do that. One of the reasons that we have found it so difficult to love our neighbor, to love the world around us, to come over the appearances, is partly because of translation. We have one word for love. The Greeks had three. You see, the original Aramaic was translated into Greek. There are no records of the original Aramaic. We only have the record of the Greek. And in Greek, There are 3 words for love. But when you translate it into English, you say love. There's the word eros, which is erotic love, and that becomes love. There's philo, which is human love, friendship love, and that becomes love. And then there's the great word, which also becomes love, but it isn't love as we know it. It's the word agape. And though I can't pronounce it, I'll just say it's agape or agape, one or the other. But it means recognition of spirit, spiritual love. And when we are told to love our neighbor, that's the word that was used. When it says love one another as I have loved you, that's the word that was used. And just me humanly loving you humanly is not the word that was used. It was the recognition of the divinity of man, that love. And had there been a translator, even one with a spiritual consciousness, rather than just take the word agape and translate it into love, just like the other 2 words, which also translate into love, he would have designated love the spiritual identity of your neighbor. And the world would have been moving in the right direction. And so Jesus, who knew that love which is the love of the Christ, the impersonal, all-inclusive love, which does not say, I love you less because you're this or you're that, but I love you because you are that living Christ of the Father behind that mortal mask. That love is what we must learn to develop. It's such a beautiful love that it will not even permit us to go out and for 1 second accept that person, as anything less. We cannot see a suffering person. We cannot see a hateful person. We cannot see a criminal person. Each of these is the human righteousness. Because I see it, it is so righteousness. The Pharisee righteousness. The righteousness that doesn't see the Christ but sees the adulteress. And so the law of the old Mosaic Testament was broken. Karmic law was broken by the Christ that walked the earth as Jesus. And as it told us to come through the visible appearances, it was teaching us how to break the karmic law which has imprisoned us in this world of opposites. If you've suffered from somebody's hate, if you'd suffered from somebody's anger, if you'd suffered from somebody's inconsiderations, you are under karmic law. And you break the karmic law as you perceive not the one who causes the suffering to you, but the Christ who is there. When these words come to us, we all think, oh, I'm going home tonight and do that. And then we find we cannot. It is the day in and the day out fidelity to doing that which ultimately breaks through the crust of human consciousness. And so this is a dedication, you see. I say unto you, do this, do that, but I also say unto you, Christ isn't attained just because you read it in a book or because you went home to do it in one night. And yet you must persevere until you do break through the shell of human consciousness, until you can actually, not by word of mouth, say this, who is antagonistic to me is the Christ, but until you can actually within yourself know that only the Christ is present where he and you stand. If you try it just with that individual, you're going to fail. It includes the taxi driver. It includes the maid. It includes that fellow who stole your car last month. You see, it includes everyone with whom you come into contact, and before you even come into contact with them. You are walking through Christ. And then all of a sudden, I say unto you, is the very voice of your own being. Why, of course this is true. Of course I can say, there is no fool. Of course I can turn the other cheek. Because there's nobody there but Christ. Nobody. And then because I have reached that level where I can and will willingly turn the other cheek, there's no demand upon you to do it. Because the Christ you have realized everywhere is never going to ask you to turn the other cheek. Only the human will. Now we have all the weapons. But if we let them lie idle, we'll continue reading more, studying more, planning and thinking more. These 3 chapters, 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew, are the weapons. And when the great authorities write the truth, they're writing about these 3 chapters. They are interpreting what is in these 3 chapters in volumes and volumes and volumes, all under different names and all under different religious names. But no one can give you I. And no one can take I away from you. I is your name. I had a call at 8 o'clock the other morning. A woman said she was shock-proof and wanted to find God. We studied a while. And it's true, very little shocked her. In fact, nothing did. She was right up to that point. But in the middle of the morning at 4 a.m. she awakened and she couldn't find this world. She couldn't find this world. She looked everywhere. It wasn't here. There was nothing. She had been hit by the realization that this world is not. She hadn't yet reached the place where she could find my kingdom, but suddenly there was no world. And she was no longer shock-proof. She was frightened. She waited to call till 8 a.m. and told me, in tears, that she couldn't find anything. There wasn't anything out there. Everything was gone. She couldn't find herself, and she thought she was going crazy. I told her to find some chapter in the books called Between Two Worlds. And I meditated for her and with her. And then I went to find that chapter to get it for her. And I found instead, my kingdom is not of this world, which was very close to what I was looking for. But in front of it was another chapter called Losing I-ness in I. And I read the first 3 paragraphs, and it was the identical experience that she was now going through. When I called her and told her to read that chapter, I told her to read the one after it as well. Losing I-ness in I. Losing I-ness in I. My kingdom is not of this world. And then if she felt like it still, to go to these 2 are in the parenthesis, by the way. And then if she felt like it, to go to the book The Infinite Way and read New Horizon. She said, well, that takes care of my day. And she read those things. And you know, within 48 hours, or less I think it was, she was on her 2 feet again, and she was trying to find that great void which had frightened her. But not only trying to find it, now everything she was reading was coming up out of the page and hitting her square in the eye. She had touched the Spirit without realizing it. It had opened her. And the pure, pallid, feeble words of the page were now vital. There wasn't anything that she didn't turn to read that didn't hit her with strength, a new meaning. That great void opened her, brought her to a place where the Spirit could speak. And then it did, you know. She never heard a voice to my knowledge, but it freed her from a great judgment that she had been making for more than a half a century. When it spoke to her, it said, you need not hate so-and-so anymore. And the removal of that hate by the voice took off of her shoulders something that for a half century and more had prevented her from finding her real freedom. All because she awoke one morning at 4 a.m. and this great void presented itself. Now, the reason I repeat it to you is this. I forgot to warn her that when it happens, not to be frightened. I really forgot that when it happens, you do get frightened. So if it does happen, even if you are frightened, remember, we all must pass through that great void. Suddenly there's no mentality. There's just a void. But it's the greatest, most wondrous void you'll ever find, because it breaks cosmic mind and opens you to the great and glorious wisdom of Spirit. And from then on, the voice may come, the click may come, anything may come. All part of your great liberation. This voice that spoke to this woman, freeing her from hate, was I, which say unto you, call no man raca, scoundrel, fool, thief, murderer, alcoholic, addict, anything. But get into that great void where the mind refuses to deny that only God is present. And then the Father which seeth in secret will reward thee openly. These are the many ways in which our righteousness must exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. You could name another 100 ways. But the Spirit through Jesus gave us these ways. There are others, and I'm sure that in modern dress, in the 20th and 21st century, the examples might have been different. We wouldn't have had to run 2 miles when someone said 1, or give them our cloak when they asked for our coat. But the meanings would have been identical. Don't take them only on their literal basis, or you lose them. Learn to accept them for the meaning, which is lifting you above the human reason, logic, thinking mind. Open yourself, surrender yourself, be meek unto your soul. And when you are mindless, void, the infinite will establish its presence in your consciousness and fill that void. Don't be afraid when it happens. You might also take a peek at those chapters that I mentioned to this woman. It's in the 3rd part, I believe, of the parenthesis, in eternity. Losing I-ness in I. My kingdom is not of this world. And then in the infinite way, new horizon. All of which have something to do with today's message, I say unto you, you have heard it said of old. And he said, heard it said, because the scribes used to read these laws out loud. In an open assembly, the scribe would read and say, an eye for an eye, or a tooth for a tooth, or thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder thy father and thy mother. And this is what they heard. Ye have heard it said of old, but I say unto you, resist not evil. For the moment you resist evil, you have found a place where God is absent, and there is no such place. In your fidelity to this omnipresence of God is your only true safety. Now, there's a lot more to be said, but there are many more chapters on the sermon, about 8. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be the kind of work that's kind of picking boll weevils off the cotton. But it has to be done. We all have to do this in our own consciousness. It isn't the kind of great, inspiring, flowing lines that we can all say, oh, how uplifting. That follows from this getting on our hands and knees. This is the kind of work that's involved in the sermon. Getting inside yourself with a detergent, scouring all of the judgments out of your being, one by one, until the pure at heart self is a perfect transparency for I. Then I will go before you. I will be the way. I will be the light. I will be the wine. I will be the water. I, the resurrection, which is the reunion of your present and your pre-existent self into one perfect, infinite selfhood. If you're a purist, you'll know I even said it wrong. You would correct me to say it is the dissolution of my imperfect present self, so that my perfect, ever-present self can reveal itself. Now let's stop those images in our final meditation. The images of people we don't like. The images of conditions we rather weren't there. If they are there, God is not. And so stop the belief that they are there. Deny thyself, that you may bear witness to the Father. Only Christ is waiting at home for you. Only Christ will ever be there. Only Christ walks the streets of every city. Only Christ is in the sky. Only Christ walks this earth. And only the Christ of you can know that. Be willing to come above your mind into the great void of that mind, where no images in this world can lie about the presence of God. That is the beginning of resurrection.